explanations to Roswell. The original, that it was a flying saucer. The second one was that it was a weather balloon. The third one was that it was a mogul balloon. And the fourth one has to do with the crash test dummies. So their next explanation will be their fifth. And I'm sure they really mean it this time.
Do you think there will be a fifth?
No.
In other words, you do not?
No.
So you think they will simply not respond in any way to this?
If they respond, they will stand by their what they've already got out there, because the fourth explanation, the reporters in the room were howling with laughter. So I don't know if they want to go through that again. And if you keep changing your explanations, at some point people don't believe you anymore.
Yes, well, that's right.
No, I don't think they will.
I've got to tell you, Tom, this virtually cinches it for me. I mean, I had a big question mark over Roswell all my life, but this really does cinch it for me. It honestly does. People, they just don't... look, I said it to the audience in the first hour, and I'll say it to you now. If he had wanted to make something of this, he was in a position where he could have written books, made a lot of money, done any TV and radio appearance he wished to do, and really just, he could have done anything he wanted while he was alive with this. So the fact that he didn't, and wrote this document, the sworn affidavit, and only to be opened after he was dead, it really does cinch it for me, Tom. What about you?
Well, Art, I was convinced before the sealed statement. For me, the sealed statement is sort of the icing on the cake, because I already had come to the conclusion of what went down at Roswell because of our investigation, which is ongoing.
Okay. And I would like to talk about that. In other words, yes, you were convinced before this. Well, I wasn't, but I'd be very interested in hearing what did it for you. I know you've been investigating for years, so maybe you can sort of, I don't know, lead us through your investigation and get to what actually cinched it for you prior to this.
Okay.
Let's start here. How did you even get interested in the whole subject?
That's an interesting question. It was in 1991. I was a reading member of the CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, that received their quarterly magazine, and there was an investigative team in there of Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt, who were publishing articles about the Roswell incident. Now, I had read the Roswell incident book when it came out in 1980, and that, as far as my interest in UFOs, that sort of cinched it for me as to my real focus was the crash saucer phenomenon. And it seemed to me that Randall and Schmidt had a investigation going on, which I just found fascinating. And one of the aspects of the investigation actually goes back to the original book, The Roswell Incident, about these archaeologists that stumbled upon the crashed saucer and some crew members lying about. Of course, that was the old Barney Barnett story at that point, but the involvement of the archaeologists is what interested me because of my background in anthropology and archaeology. And the fact that these archaeologists allegedly came from the University of Pennsylvania. And myself, living near Philadelphia, I thought, well, geez, this ought to be a slam dunk for me to go down to the university and find out who they were.
All right. Hold it right there, Tom. Tom Carey is my guest. He's a first-time guest on Coast, but a long-time investigator of the Roswell case. And we have big new news on Roswell tonight. We'll be right back. Here I am. All right, everybody. It's breaking everywhere now. At this hour, we're collecting stories from thisislondon.co.uk. So from England, I'm seeing yet another story I just found. Daily Mail in London also just broke the story. So at this hour, it's breaking worldwide. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Lieutenant Walter Haupt. And it's funny the way news stories break, isn't it? Actually, Tom got it in the last chapter of his book, and we'll find out the timing on that here shortly. But this is just breaking now around the world. It's one of those stories that once it breaks in one place, it's going to break everywhere. And thank goodness the timing is absolutely perfect for this night and my guest. Tom Carey, the subject Roswell, breaking news. We'll be right back. Tom, we've got to come back to it for a moment here because it's breaking in the mainstream press very rapidly. I've now got two stories from Great Britain, which has always just bugged the hell out of me. The fact that I've got to get important news about things that occur here in the U.S. from other nations, particularly from Great Britain, and of course Australia. Now, Tom, why do you think this is virtually, as we're speaking, at this hour, beginning to break so hard in the mainstream press?
That's a good question, Art.
It is.
When our book came out, I tried to interest our local media here in Philadelphia about the not only the 60th anniversary that's approaching, but also our book, and the fact that there was a local angle, meaning me, that was involved in the case, and so far they've shown no interest. But apparently across the world, in Australia and Great Britain, they have a different attitude. Now, I think, I'm guessing this is just speculation as to why it's breaking now, is that last week, Bill Burns from UFO the publisher of UFO Magazine, held a press conference in New York City, announcing the sealed statement of Walter Haupt. And of course he gave the source of the statement as our book. But the fact that he held it in New York City, perhaps there were other newsmen there from wherever. And the internet being what it is, you know how word gets around much faster these days than when the first Roswell book came out. So I'm guessing that's how it's happened.
Well, this is only tangent. It's not really related. But, you remember the Phoenix Lights?
Yes.
I covered that. I was on the air the night that happened. I took call after call after call after call. Witnesses, people who were frantic, saw the Phoenix Lights, saw the craft, swore to me they had seen a solid craft in Sokoto Swamp. The whole night, that's all we did was take calls. Phoenix, Phoenix, Phoenix. Then, for 3 months, Tom, it went deader than a doornail. Not a word. And then, like somebody threw a switch, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, all of them were on the Phoenix Lights like it had happened hours ago. It's like somebody threw a switch.
It's like somebody has to take the lead, I presume, and report it, and then the others will follow. But maybe sometimes no one wants to take that.
But it's right. It's happening again, right before our eyes, right now. And so...
Well, that's good to hear from our perspective.
Well, I guess so. Tell me how you managed to get it in your book. Your book came out how long ago?
We finished it in December, and it came out 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. And when did you get the information on the sealed statement into the book as the last chapter?
December.
December?
Yes. So it was in the manuscript. We finished the manuscript in December, sent it to the publisher, and it hit the bookstores, most notably Barnes & Noble, 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
Yes. And it had an incredible start, and we're going into our second printing.
Already?
Yes.
And what kind of reaction have you been getting to that last chapter?
Well, Don and I have been getting a lot of emails and all of them are outstanding. I mean, the feedback has been outstanding. But what's interesting is that while the media seems to have latched on to the sealed statement, the emails that we're getting are more just about the wealth of information, the wealth of new information in the book. The sealed statement we put in there to be the crown jewel of the book, and placing it last for best effect. But
Well, you understand, don't you, why it's such a big deal? I mean,
absolutely.
a man who could have made a lot of money, who could have been famous, could have virtually done anything he wanted to do with that information when he was alive, to have written it as an affidavit, and one only to be opened on his death. It's a big story. I'm glad the press now is recognizing it as such, and I suppose eventually we're going to see something in the American media virtually any minute.
we hope.
All right, well, let's come back for a moment. Even though this certainly qualifies as breaking news, let's come back to, I guess, what got you, or what convinced you, and that's a strong word, convinced you about Roswell in the first place.
Well, I liked the first book, the 1980, the Roswell incident, but it was the Randall Schmidt book of 1991, UFO Crash at Roswell, that really, for me, got me thinking, wow, this is, because they had so much new information in it. I thought, wow, here's a lot of work done, and boy, did they uncover a lot of new information about the case, testimony and what have you, and I said, boy, there's really something to this. Now, Don and I teamed up in 1998. Now, this is a year after the hoopla from the 1997 50th anniversary, where, you know, the media really took to the case, and most of the former investigators, I feel, packed it in at that point, 1997. Before the show, I looked through my library here at the Roswell books that I had. Most of them were written in 1997, 10 years ago. So Don and I wanted to continue a proactive, I emphasize the word proactive, investigation of the case, meaning that we're not going to sit around and wait for leads to plop in our laps. We're going to go out there and shake the tree and see what we can find. We didn't know what we would find, but there were still a number of witnesses that hadn't been talked to, many of them, and enough out there that it made it worthwhile for us to continue. And the continuing wealth of information from witness testimony, and believe me, they're not talking about a weather balloon or a high altitude balloon, that they are not, is what sort of put the nail in the coffin for me of any other explanation other than a UFO crash.
What do you think you know for sure? How should I say for sure? I mean, you talk to witnesses. What kind of things did they tell you?
Well, the witnesses that we talked to, they don't know the whole story. They only know their little piece of it.
Sure.
What they saw, what somebody told them, in some cases what they handled, and it's our job to put the little pieces of the puzzle into a framework that makes sense, and that's the way we look at it. Now, we've found new witnesses who have seen the bodies. A number of them say that one was alive. We believe there were two body sites. One up on the Foster Ranch where Mac Brazel discovered all of that wreckage in his sheep pasture. There's a site 2 miles from there where Mac found something else, which we believe were 3 bodies. There's another body site 40 miles north of Roswell in Chavez County, where the remainder of the craft that blew up over Brazel's pasture came to rest. We believe it was an escape pod or an escape capsule or some sort of interior protective device in case of some malfunction, and it came to rest north of town with four occupants and one which was alive.
Wow. That's what's always bothered me. On the ranch, I never felt, although obviously I wasn't there and I didn't see how much debris there was, but you know, they discussed the material that would bend but wouldn't burn or couldn't be torn or couldn't be torn or whatever. And I always thought, well, that's interesting, but we're not talking about a craft here. And now we're talking about other crash sites. So in other words, only part of this came down on the farm, and the rest of it came down elsewhere, yes?
Yes, exactly. And along the way, 3 occupants were blown out and landed 2.5 miles from the original debris field site. So we're talking about 7 occupants, one of which was alive, at least for a period of time. A sheep pasture, maybe a mile long and a couple hundred feet wide, just covered with wreckage in small pieces, and an egg-shaped pod or an escape capsule of some sort that continued on for another few miles and came to rest about 40 miles north of town.
Tom, how detailed a description of the occupants do we have? What is the best?
They are all the same.
They're all the same.
Yes, the descriptions we're getting are very similar.
How many witnesses are we talking about? When you say they're all the same, how many witnesses contributed descriptions that match?
Oh, geez. I'd have to sit down. I mean, it's like over 10, maybe 20. So I'd have to sit down and just add them up.
10 to 20, somewhere in there. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. Can you give me your best shot at describing what they described, please?
Yes. 3.5 to 4 feet tall, maybe 40 pounds. Very frail, but the overriding feature is the large head. Everyone describes the large hairless head, shaped like an inverted pear or an inverted egg, slightly slanted eyes, not like these big black ovals that you see, in the abduction.
In the grays, the supposed grays, right?
Yeah, not like that. Just slightly larger than ours and slightly slanted. One witness described them as tear-shaped, like tears, and you can imagine, just picture that. No nose, just two little holes in the front of the head for nostrils, 2 holes for ears, no earlobe, no fleshy part of the ear, a slit about 1 inch to 1.5 inches where the mouth would be. A mouth that doesn't go anywhere, just made up of cartilage and a little orifice in there, but it doesn't lead to a digestive system. So, what am I leaving out? Oh, the color. Oh, arms that go below the knees. The color is variously reported as mostly grayish, but with tints of either green, blue, orange, yellow. We think that has to do with the state of decay or preservation and perhaps lighting. But several military witnesses described, like Pappy Henderson described them as reminding him of Casper the Ghost, the old cartoon character.
Friendly ghost, yeah.
Yes. Another witness, we believe Jesse Marcel saw the bodies. That's another new, Jesse Marcel Sr., that's another conclusion of our book, is that Jesse Marcel saw them at some point.
Well, if so, did he describe that to his son? Because I've interviewed on a number of occasions his son, and he never...
No, we got the information from a third party. And the information was that Jesse told him that they reminded him of white rubbery figures. Now, to me, that means something like either the Pillsbury Doughboy or the Michelin Man. But white rubbery figures. And someone else, another witness by the name of Marion Magruder, an Air Force pilot, night fighter pilot in World War II, described them. He saw them at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in late July 1947 with the Air War college class. He just described them as squiggly. So those are some of the descriptions, but they 3.5 to 4 feet tall is pretty much described by everybody.
Okay, what about the one that was still alive? What do we know about that one, if anything?
That one, we have, how long it lasted or how long it lived is a matter of conjecture. We have someone who said that there's been a story around for years that it was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until 1952, at which time it expired. The World War II pilot, Marion Magruder, is to believe he saw it at late July at Wright-Pat. Others seem to feel that it expired soon after it was brought to the base hospital.
Well, either way, if this is true, then through various means, including autopsy and a lot more, we know an awful lot about these beings.
Well, we know what they look like. We know where they were taken. In fact, one of the witnesses at the site, this is before it was removed to the hospital, his family asked him, well, did it talk to you? Did it speak to you? And he said, yes, but in my head. He didn't say anything about mental telepathy or anything like that. He just said that the being talked to him in his head and that it told him not to worry, that it was all right, that there was nothing that he could do, that he was accepting his fate, something like that.
In other words, he knew he was going to die.
Well, that he wouldn't get back to where he came from, that
Right.
he more or less stuck, but that he accepted it and not to worry.
How much credence do you give to this report?
Well, it was told by a public official in Roswell who was at the site. And we got it. He was gone by the time that the investigators came around, and we got it from a family member, and whom we believed. So we think the credibility of the story is high. He had no reason to make this up. He didn't make any money off of it, and it was told to the family at the time, not after the books came out, but it was told in 1947. The family was severely threatened with their lives never to speak of this. And we got the story in the 90s, a few years ago.
By the way, folks, this is breaking in a sense, so if you want to read about it, coasttocoastam.com, we've got it up there now. Scroll down on the front page, hot stories for Saturday, June 30th. Roswell officer's deathbed admission is the title of the story. This one from thisislondon.co.uk. So this one's coming from Great Britain, and we managed to get it up there.
I would like to report that they're getting their story from our book, Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the 60-Year Cover-Up.
Got it. Clearly you had it ahead of seemingly everybody else. Was there anybody at all, Tom, to your knowledge, that broke this story ahead of your book?
No, because there were only two copies of the sealed statement, one that the family had, and one that we had a copy. Our investigation had. So, no one else had.
I love the way the world's press operates. I just absolutely love it. Tom, hold tight. We're a breaking news evening underway. Tom Carey is my guest. The subject is Roswell, but the news for us is brand new. All right, I've just been sent something that I'd like to authenticate. Tom, if you're there, I've got a quick question for you. If you were to hear the affidavit of Walter G. Hout, would you be able to authenticate it?
If I would hear it?
Yeah, if you would hear it, would you be able to tell me if it was authentic?
Well, I have a copy in my book.
Okay. I'm going to ask you then to hold on. In a moment, we'll come back, and I'm going to read it. And you can tell me if it's word for word correct or not. We'll be right back. I want to thank Doug, who is an amateur radio operator, for sending me the following. Here it comes, folks. 2002 sealed affidavit of Walter G. Hout. Date December 26, 2002. Witness Chris, and then it's X out. Notary Beverly, and I don't want to read the last name. I'll hold that back. Here it comes. 1. My name is Walter G. Hout. 2. I was born on June 2nd, 1922. 3. My address is 1405 7th Street, Roswell, New Mexico, 88203. 4. I am retired. 5. In July 1947, I was stationed at the Roswell Army Air Base in Roswell, New Mexico, serving as the base public information officer. I had spent the 4th of July weekend, Saturday the 5th and Sunday the 6th, at my private residence about 10 miles north of the base, which was located south of town. 6. I was aware that someone had reported the remains of a downed vehicle by mid-morning after my return to duty at the base Monday, July 7th. I was aware that Major Jesse A. Marcel, head of intelligence, was sent by the base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, to investigate. 7. By late in the afternoon that same day, I would learn that additional civilian reports came in regarding a second site just north of Roswell. I would spend the better part of the day attending to my regular duties, hearing little, if anything, more. 8. On Tuesday morning, July 8th, I would attend the regularly scheduled staff meeting at 7:30 a.m. Besides Blanchard, Marcel, CIC, Counterintelligence Corps, Captain Sheridan Cabot, Colonel James, I believe it's I. Hopkins, the operations officer, Lieutenant Ulysses S. Nero, the supply officer, and from Carswell Air Force, AAF, in Fort Worth, Texas, Blanchard's boss, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Du Bois, J. Du Bois, were in attendance. The main topic of discussion was reported by Marcel and Cabot regarding an extensive debris field in Lincoln County, approximately 75 miles northwest of Roswell. A preliminary briefing was provided by Blanchard about the second site, approximately 40 miles north of town. Samples of wreckage were passed around the table. It was unlike any material I have ever seen in my life. Pieces which resembled metal foil, paper thin, yet extremely strong, and pieces with unusual markings along their length were handed from man to man, each voicing their opinion. No one was able to identify the crash debris. 9. One of the main concerns discussed at the meeting was whether we should go public or not with the discovery. General Ramey proposed a plan which I believe originated from his bosses at the Pentagon. Attention needed to be diverted from the more important site north of town by acknowledging the other location. Too many civilians were already involved, and the press already was informed. I was not immediately informed how this would be accomplished. 10. At approximately 9:30 a.m., Colonel Blanchard phoned my office and dictated the press release of having in our possession a flying disc. coming from a ranch northwest of Roswell, and Marcel flying the material to higher headquarters. I was to deliver the news release to radio stations KGFL and KSWS and newspapers, the Daily Record and the Morning Dispatch. 11. By the time the news release hit the wire services, my office was inundated with phone calls from around the world. Messages stacked up on my desk. Rather than deal with immediate concern, Colonel Blanchard suggested I go home and hide out. That's in quotes. 12. Before leaving the base, Colonel Blanchard took me personally to Building 84, a.k.a. Hangar P as in Paul 3, a B-29 hangar located on the east side of the tarmac. Upon first approaching the building, I observed that I was under heavy guard both outside and inside. Once inside, I was permitted from a safe distance to observe the object just recovered from north of town. It was approximately 12 to 15 feet in length, not quite as wide, about 6 feet high, and more of an egg shape. Lighting was poor, but its surface did appear metallic. No windows, portals, wings, tail section, or landing gear were visible. 13. Also, from a distance, I was able to see a couple of bodies under a canvas tarpaulin. Only the heads extended beyond the covering. I was not able to make out any features. The heads did appear larger than normal, and the contour of the canvas suggested the size of a 10-year-old child. At a later date in Blanchard's office, he would extend his arm about 4 feet above the floor to indicate the height. 14. I was informed of a temporary morgue set up to accommodate the recovered body. 15. I was informed that the wreckage was not hot, in parentheses, radioactive. 16. Upon his return from Fort Worth, Major Marcel described to me taking pieces of the wreckage to General Ramey's office, and after returning from a map room, finding the remains of a weather balloon and radar kite substituted while he was out of the room. Marcel was very upset over this situation. We would not discuss it again. 17. I would be allowed to make at least one visit to one of the recovery sites during the military cleanup. I would return to the base with some of the wreckage, which I would display in my office. 18. I was aware 2 separate teams would return to each site months later for periodic searches for any remaining evidence. 19. I am convinced that what I personally observed was some type of craft and its crew from outer space. 20. I have not been paid nor given anything of value to make this statement, and it is the truth to the best of my recollection. Signed, Walter G. Howe, December 26, 2002. Signature witnessed by Chris, and then it's X'd out. Tom, did I read the real thing?
Exactly. Word for word.
There you got it, folks.
That's it.
I'm glad for some personal reasons that I was able to air this. I guess I've been waiting for this for a long time, Tom, and I guess when you first saw it, you must have felt the same way.
Yes. Of course, I knew of its existence, but when I actually read it, it just, for me, it confirmed everything that I knew or suspected. And Walter, being the kind of person he was, you would not think it was anything other than the truth.
I don't. I believe it, word for word, completely. I believe it, Tom. It's as simple as that. We've been visited. Wow.
Well, certainly this. I don't know about other cases, but certainly the Roswell case, to me, is a case of that strongly suggests. I can only use those words. Strongly suggest, as an investigator, a case of alien visitation. It's the simplest explanation, to use Occam's razor, that explains the data. Anything else, you have to go far afield to make it fit. The wealth of information that we have The only thing that fits is an extraterrestrial craft and crew.
Yeah, obviously. Tom, do you know offhand, and I'm reaching out on the edge now, but during the telepathic communication, you indicated that the creature had said he had accepted its fate,
Yes.
knew it wasn't going to go home. Was there anything else about the beings themselves, the reason, the motivation for the visit, anything at all that was allegedly communicated by this being?
Not to this witness. If anything like that would have transpired, I would suspect that it was when it was in, captivity. I don't like to use the word, but when it was...
Well, that's probably the right word.
when it was in the care of our military at either at Wright-Patterson or perhaps it was loaned elsewhere. We don't know. But as far as we're concerned, that gets into the area of speculation because we're asked that question occasionally. Where were they from? Why were they here?
I'm sorry again. How many bodies total?
I believe there were seven. One alive for at least a period of time.
With the one being one of the seven?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any idea where these bodies? I mean, obviously we still have them somewhere. We would have kept these bodies forever and ever. Where? Do you have any guesses or knowledge about where they might be now?
Where they are at as we speak, I don't know, but we do know that they were loaned around for study.
Loaned around?
Yes. To various military bases that had facilities to examine them further. One that I'm aware of is Randolph Air Force Base near San Antonio, Texas. We had a story from a fellow who was a civilian there back in 1964. That's back when I was in the Air Force. That he saw one there, and Randolph has an aeromedical facility, which is a medical facility, and he saw one there in 1964. We have reports of one or more being in Florida. There's three bases that I know of, Homestead, Eglin, and MacDill. I don't know which one, but certainly reports there. We know one of the flights went there out of Roswell. Well, we know one of the flights went to Florida. Whether it took one of the bodies, we don't know, but we can speculate.
All right, Tom. Here's another speculative question. This was a long time ago now, 60 years ago now. Tom, do we think we understand why the government, the military, why our leaders felt it necessary for this amount of time to keep this, it's the biggest story in the world. There is not a bigger story if we've been visited by beings from elsewhere. Why they felt it necessary to keep this secret for 60 years?
We don't believe there's any logical reason today to keep it secret because of the discoveries of other planets in the universe.
That's right.
A small number of which seem to resemble Earth. There's no good reason today, in my opinion.
Just the perpetuation of secrecy. In other words, once you've pulled a lie, then I suppose, we all know how lies go. You've got to...
Keeping it, we believe that's what's keeping the secret today, or the cover-up, is the perpetuation of a lie. But back in 1947, there were good logical reasons to keep this secret. They didn't know. At first, they thought it was Russian. Then they realized it wasn't Russian, and it became, with the dawn of the Cold War, that we have to keep this secret from the Russians. Perhaps we can exploit It's technology, and let's keep it secret.
Okay, then that's understandable. I mean, it really is. But the Soviet Union is gone. No more. It seems to me this sealed affidavit blows it all wide open. Now, there's going to have to be some answers. I mean, there's going to have to be a response to this, Tom.
You would think.
Yeah, this is not like the other evidence, which I admit is compelling. This is really compelling. I mean, again, this man
was on the inside. He saw a lot. He was the right-hand man of the base commander, who was when he passed away, when Blanchard passed away at age 50, he was second in command of the entire Air Force. He was vice chief of staff, 4 stars. He was scheduled to become the next chief of staff of the Air Force. Not something you would give to someone who would make up a boo-boo back in 1947 and
Indeed.
Get everybody excited over a weather balloon.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. This really blows it. All right, you describe these beings 3.5, 4 feet tall, 40 pounds, perhaps frail, very frail, large heads, slightly slanted eyes, tear-shaped eyes, arms that extended down below their knees. I think it's time that our government and our military gave it up. Obviously, they've got these bodies. It's time, Tom.
You would think. Especially I think people are accepting. I mean, it's not the days of, you remember the old science fiction movies with the Earth versus the flying saucers, that sort of stuff.
Of course, yes.
Those days anymore.
Although one has to wonder if there is something beyond what you know and I know now, tonight, that they may have found out that caused them to keep this secret. In other words, more than just building on a lie or holding on to a lie. Maybe there's something that they found out, some technology that, was back engineered. I don't know.
The only other thing that makes quasi sense is that in the early 60s, the Brookings Institution conducted a study of the potential effects of
disclosure,
contact with an extraterrestrial civilization, and all the potential effects were bad. Destruction of our financial institutions, or collapse of our financial institutions, our religious institutions, and our social institutions. So,
Tom, you'll never know. I have quoted Brookings to the point of nausea. As what I believe to be still the reason that we keep this secret. Now,
certainly, we believe it's still a factor, but the other factor is, as you said, the perpetuation of a lie. We think it's those two.
Well, maybe. I'm not sure that religious institutions would crumble. I'm sure there'd be some shaking going on, but I don't see them as crumbling. Unless the real truth includes, some kind of information, for example, that telepathically someone was told that they are our makers. Something of that magnitude could certainly cause a collapse.
Yeah, something like that. But
and you're not aware of anything like that, are you?
No. The only thing that we're aware of is what the one witness was able to convey about what he heard in his head. So.
And that was it. The creature was aware of its fate.
Yes. And he was trying to calm, to ease the concern of the person that was out there, the city official, and he said, don't worry, there's nothing you can do. I accept what's happened.
Can you name this person?
Yes, he was one of the firemen that was out there.
One of the firemen?
Yes, his name was Dan Dwyer.
And he has since passed?
Yeah, oh, yes. Yes, he was long gone by the time the case became known to investigators. So
All
we
right.
got the information from his daughter.
Right. Hold tight from his daughter. Wow. Tom Carey is my guest, and this is, without a doubt, a breaking news night from the high desert and the great American Southwest. I'm Mark Bell. Isn't this fascinating? I mean, this news has been out. It really has. It's in Tom Carey's book. Apparently that was the first place, and it's really been sitting there since about, December or so. But it didn't break. I mean, it may have been recited by one person or another, and certainly appeared in the book, and now all of a sudden, click. Fascinating the way our press works. It really is. What a story. Tom Carey is my guest. He'll be right back. I don't know what's true. Maybe it's true that information gets out and somehow it's not recognized for the level of importance that it carries for some time. I'm not sure. Let me ask you this. Scott sent me a message here from Texas, Humboldt, Texas. It says, Art, for the sake of good record, do any medical records exist that show without any doubt that Colonel was not suffering from some sort of senility or any other medical defect caused by old age on the date of 12/22/2002 when that affidavit was signed? Hello?
Yes. As a matter of fact, he had just had a medical examination, a physical, at that time, and he was in good health.
Uh-huh.
So it was at that time they said, let's do a sealed statement now, because he's feeling good. He just had medical physical,
Right.
good health, and rather than because if he was in his 80s when he passed away, 2002, he'd be in his late 70s, right?
Yes, sir.
So he said, let's do it now. So, there are medical records, I'm sure, but I haven't looked at them.
Okay, but you are aware of a physical examination, right, at the point or just prior to the point where he did the affidavit?
Yes. Can I just say something about to end the story about the fireman?
You certainly may.
There was some when that story first came out, there was a controversy over whether fire trucks went out outside the city limits of Roswell. And so about 2 years ago, I interviewed the sons of the former fire chief. Rue Chrisman was the fire chief. He had two sons that I interviewed. And what it was, they both said that it wasn't a full-fledged fire wagon that went out. It was what they call a tanker, which is basically a pickup with a large tank on the back filled with water.
Right.
And that's went out. That's what went out. Dan Dwyer was the driver, and his co-pilot was a fellow named Lee Reeves. Dwyer was dead before we came calling in. Lee Reeves we've never found, and he's presumed to be dead. So a tanker truck went out.
You've never found him. He is presumed to be dead.
Lee Reeves, yes. I looked for it. Basically what we have are phone books, the internet phone book, and we have not been able to find a Lee Reeves that used to live in Roswell.
So if he's still out there, if he's still alive, I'm sure you'd love to hear from him.
I sure would.
All right, so we have actually several free crash sites.
Yes.
Total?
Well, one is what we call a body site. It wasn't a case where the craft came down and crashed again. It's just that
Right.
It blew up over Brazel's sheep pasture, perhaps struck with lightning, perhaps a malfunction of some sort.
Actually, I was going to additionally ask, is there any possibility, or has it been suggested, Tom, that we may have shot it down?
We've heard that question asked. We have no indication that it was shot down. Perhaps it has something to do with there were various locations in New Mexico, which was highly secret at that time, that had radar. And the only other thought that what could have happened is something malfunctioning because of the radar. We don't know. It's just speculation. Those are the two possibilities of. We know that there was a tremendous thunder and lightning storm going on that night. It was the monsoon season for New Mexico,
Right.
Early July, and we've seen some of that lightning and thunder, and it's scary.
Oh, it is indeed. We have it. We get it here a little bit later, but oh yes, Roswell gets pounded by incredible lightning storms.
So, speculating along those lines, makes as much sense as anything else. And of course, the radar is again speculation, but no thought that they were tracking it and opened up on it and shot it down.
All right.
We don't buy that.
All right. You, I take it, are quite familiar, I hope, with Lieutenant Corso's book and his testimony.
Well, it's 10 years ago. I know the basics of it.
Okay, I had the fortune to interview Colonel Corso, oh gosh, I think a total of 3 or 4 times perhaps. And he articulated some of the technology that he alleges he passed on from the Roswell crash to American industry. You know about all that?
Well, yes, I guess he worked for a fellow named Trudeau.
Right.
And he was given the Roswell file, and they back-engineered, re-engineered
That's right.
some items. Don and I, we don't follow that trail. It's our mission is to follow the trail leading to whether this event really happened or it didn't happen. Something like back engineering, and whether things like transistors and Velcro and fiber optics came from the Roswell crash, that's not on our radar.
All right, you want to verify the crash itself.
Yes, the crash recovery, cover-up, that sort of thing.
Would you call this affidavit that I read a little while ago,
Smoking gun?
well, smoking gun, Holy Grail, whatever?
Certainly a smoking gun. The Holy Grail for us is an actual piece of what we call the memory metal. This is that metal that's been described by various witnesses.
You're saying you have a piece?
No, I say we're looking for a piece.
Oh.
That's our Holy Grail, where you could just wad it up in your hand, and it feels like you have nothing in your hand, and you turn it over, and you drop it on a flat surface, and it just flattens right out in about a second.
Yeah.
The original shape.
Yeah, according to the affidavit, there were pieces of that or something passed around virtually hand to hand.
Yes. We've spoken to a number of witnesses who have seen and held that sort of material. And the reason we call it the Holy Grail of Roswell is because if you have a piece of that, you go on camera, and you don't have to send it away to be analyzed for isotopic constituents. You can just visually see that it's something truly
Alien.
extraordinary, that you don't have to send it out. And certainly they had nothing like that in 1947. I don't think they have anything like that today, at least from the descriptions that we've heard. So
In your investigations, Tom, there obviously have been around the world. There have been many crashes and contact stories. I wonder if you've gone beyond Roswell. I mean, once you believe that this occurred in Roswell, then you have to begin wondering, whether it's occurred legitimately elsewhere since.
Well, you know, Art, until this case is finished, you know, Don works full time, and so do I, and so we have to focus our attention.
Right.
And until this case is solved, and until we're finished with this case, that means either all the witnesses die,
And we're getting close to that point, aren't we?
yes. Of the people pictured in the base yearbook from 1947, of the hundreds that we've called, about 90% of them are gone now.
Sure.
About 10% left, and maybe half of those are infirm to the point that we can't interview them. So we're talking about a shrinking witness pool that certainly by the next 10th anniversary, the 70th anniversary, there won't be anyone left to interview. So we're going to follow this until either the witnesses pass away, we pass away, we find a piece of memory metal, or that the day of disclosure it comes to a reality, meaning the government comes clean.
I wonder if something with the power. This affidavit has power. There's no question about it. And
Absolutely.
I wouldn't close out the possibility that at some level somebody is considering whether it's time to come clean.
We've heard from one witness. We didn't believe everything he said because we caught him fabricating documents. This was after he passed away, but we believe he was connected. And in his final days, he's told us that the game continues. And what is that game? He said they're trying to run out the clock.
Well, the clock is running out.
Yep.
But the problem with any witness, of course, once you've caught him in a lie, you've got then all the material is suspect.
Yes. But we knew this gentleman for years, and we're still debating what his role was.
And just to be very clear, we're absolutely not talking about Walter Howe here.
No. Absolutely not talking about Walter Howe.
Okay.
His story was consistent over the years, but you had to believe he had to know more than just the original press release, just from where he was placed. And if you read his body language, his language was, I am keeping a secret, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. And rather than lie about it, he would just, when you pressed him, he would just say, that was a long time ago.
Did he ever allude to what he signed?
No. After we knew he signed it, we just didn't ask him any more questions.
You're talking about the affidavit, right?
Yes.
No. I meant originally. Did he ever allude to what he might have originally signed in terms of some sort of promise or security document?
Oh no. In fact, we don't believe he did sign one. Unless it's I can't remember now if it's in the affidavit or not. But the promise to Butch Blanchard was enough for him.
Well, we all, everybody in the service took an oath, and I guess he was keeping that oath.
Yes, he was keeping the oath, and more importantly, his promise to Blanchard, because they were good friends, and Walter could have followed him to Washington and maybe a star or two.
Did Blanchard ever make any statements?
Very few. In a few years after this happened, he was attending a function in Roswell, and he spoke to, I believe it was Art McQuitty, who was the publisher of the, I get confused if he was the publisher of the Roswell Morning Dispatch or he was one of the owners of KSWS, the radio station. But McQuitty asked him, what was that stuff back in 47? And all Blanchard said was it was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. Strangest thing he'd ever seen. And
Well, that certainly wouldn't be consistent with
a balloon.
at all.
And he made some statements at home whenever his family pressed him. Dad, what was that? What was that? His daughter, Dale, mentioned in an article that was published in 1996 that whenever they asked him about Roswell, he would like stare off into space and say, "The Russians have some amazing things." That's all he said. The Russians have some amazing things, and that was the end of the conversation.
Not that amazing. And who, obviously Walter House, who would you rate next in importance in terms of the witnesses?
Wow. Certainly Edwin Easley, the
who said
Provost Marshal, who, when Randall interviewed him, I think it was 1989, he just kept repeating, "I can't tell you anything, I'm still sworn to secrecy." Now, what kind of balloon, it just doesn't hold up that a rubber balloon is something that will cause you to be sworn to secrecy.
not at all, nor even, and what year was that he said that?
1989.
Or even,
There. But later on, we found out that when he was on his deathbed, his granddaughter came in with a copy of Randall and Schmidt's, I don't know if it was their first book or the second book, but it was about Roswell. And she said, "Granddad, what about this?" Held up the book in front of him and he said, "Oh, the creatures. Oh, the creatures." And we know from other witnesses that he was out at the crash site. They saw him out there. In fact, his daughter, who's a lawyer today, was part of the archaeological team, the volunteers digging in 2002 for the sci-fi documentary, the Roswell crash, Startling New Evidence. She was out there. She wanted to see where her father had been and if he had done a good job of cleaning up the site.
apparently so.
Yes.
Has there been, in all the years, in all the attempts, has there been anything at all found? Any small anything?
Well, in 2002, we had the financial backing of the Sci-Fi Channel, and we had a team of archaeologists, degreed archaeologists from the University of New Mexico leading us. And we did find some things. Before I tell you, I just want to say that we dug in an area that, in my opinion, was not prime for finding what we were looking for. By that I mean a piece of metal, some of that memory metal or some of the rigid metal.
So what did you find?
What we found were a number of small items that the archaeologists couldn't identify. They had the appearance of something natural, but they couldn't identify them, and they never could. But their final conclusion was, well, they must be something, but we just can't identify them. We also found the rubber sole of a military boot.
Probably one of those who had been conducting the original search, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
All right, listen, Tom, hold tight. We're at the top of the hour. Tom Carey is my guest. The subject is Roswell, and there certainly is lots of breaking news associated with it. When we come back, we're going to open the phone line, so those of you that know the numbers, and have a question, and I can't imagine you wouldn't have one, you can dial now. We'll be right back. Here I am. My guest is Tom Carey. That's T-H-O-M, by the way, Tom Carey, C-A-R-E-Y. His book is Unmasking the 60-Year Cover-Up. And it's only out now, a very short time. Amazon.com, all the usual places. The affidavit that I read is in the book, as is so very much more about Roswell. So if it's in your gray baskets, a friend of ours would say, and you want to pull it out or decide for yourself, this would be your opportunity. Pick up that book, do the read, and figure it out for yourself. We'll be right back. More with Tom in a moment. We're going to go to the phones. However, who is Major Patrick Saunders?
Major Patrick Saunders was the 509th, the Roswell-based adjutant to Colonel Blanchard.
Okay.
And he died in 1995, but before he died, he bought up a bunch of copies of Randall and Schmidt's second book, The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell.
Yes. But I'm sorry, what year was it he died?
1995.
95. I thought you said 45. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
1995, and so right before he died, he bought up a bunch of copies of the second Randall and Schmidt book. The first page inside the book was a page entitled Damage Control, and it told about what the authors believed happened to the records. They were vacuumed, serial numbers were changed so that people looking in the future couldn't really track down anybody, and records were destroyed. Above this heading, Damage Control, which was on the first page inside, Patrick Saunders wrote hand wrote, "Here's the truth, and I still haven't told anybody anything!" Exclamation point. This is right before he passed away.
Real.
And we thought at the time, well, he just must be talking about the book in general. Well, after the key witness in the book imploded, that would be Frank Kaufman, one of the main witnesses in this book. We caught him in a number of fabrications. We started thinking, well, I did right away. I thought, geez, what could he have been talking about? So I looked at that page again, and the closeness of his handwritten note to the damage control paragraph, I had an epiphany at that point that this is what he was talking about. Not the book in general, but what followed in that paragraph. Well,
Which was?
That he basically had been in charge of covering the trail, covering the paper trail. It was already in place at Roswell back in 1947.
There would have been a lot of cleanup, paperwork-wise, people-wise. It would have been a hell of a job.
Yes, but a few months ago, I received an email from Kevin Randall, one of the co-authors of the book,
Right?
and he had independently come to the same epiphany. And so we compared notes, and we both agreed that that's what Patrick Saunders was talking about, is that he was the one who initiated the vacuuming of the files, the covering the paper trail. And if you remember, Art, the Government Accounting Office in 1993 and 1994, when they were looking for a paper trail,
Yes.
they found out that it was inexplicably
Missing.
there was none. There was
That's right.
the papers out of Roswell were inexplicably destroyed without apparent authority. Well,
You recall a congressman looking very, very hard for that information and coming up empty.
empty. And now we know from Patrick Saunders that the the vacuuming, the destruction of the paper trail. Not that he did it all, but it started with him.
All right.
That's in our book.
All right, and a lot more. All right, here we go. John in Houston, Texas. You're on with Tom. Hi.
Hi, Art. I'm proud to be talking with you.
Thanks.
Enjoy your show all these years, Mr. Carey. Thank you for your work. My father was the flight operations officer that night, and he was the flight operations officer on the plane that Mr. Marcel flew out of there, and I wondered if you had talked to them. I know Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Randall have interviewed him for their other books.
You mean Bob Shirkey?
Yes, that's my dad.
Oh, yes. Well, hello.
Hi there.
Yes, we talk to Bob as often as we can. I understand he's in a assisted care facility now. Is that?
That's correct. Yes, he's had some health problems, and he's not going to make it to Roswell this year, and he's sad about that. And we're all hoping he gets better. But he was
Great guy. We've talked to him often, and his story is.
I'll tell you what. Why don't we ask, since we got his son on the line? Why don't we ask what your dad told you?
Well, he didn't talk about it. He was like all those other fellas. Nobody talked until 1989, and all of a sudden it broke. I was watching television one night and saw my dad on TV, and I went, my God, and I called him, and I said, what in the world is this? And he laid it out to me and told me he had said to Colonel Blanchard and watched them load the wreckage and told me what it looked like and said it was nothing none of them had ever seen before. And my dad was a pilot. He just happened to be the operations officer that night. They all traded jobs so everybody would know each other's jobs. And he was a pilot. And
do you remember his exact words when he described what he saw?
he told me he saw pieces of it looked like metal beams, and it had strange writing on it, and none of them knew what it was, and it wasn't hieroglyphics, and it wasn't anything that any of them had ever seen before. And Glenn Dennis, the man that sent the caskets to the funeral home, I've known him all my life. I was born in Roswell in 1949, and my family, we knew Glenn Dennis. He took care of the funerals for my grandparents and a lot of my relatives, and Walter Hawk lived around the corner from my aunt and uncle, and I've known those men all my life, and they were just stand-up guys, and they didn't all get together in a coffee shop one afternoon to say, hey, let's make a story.
Yeah, I hear you. So when you heard this affidavit of Walter House, it rang true to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He was a stand-up guy. I mean, none of those men, like I said, none of those men were even talking. They never talked about this. Nobody ever said a word about this. And until I guess Stan Freeman and those fellows, Mr. Randall and Mr. Smith went out and they all started looking into it. And the dam broke and then everybody else started coming out with their stories.
Is there anything your dad told you haven't made public?
He told me pretty much what Walter Haw had said. Walter and my dad were friends, good friends, and Walter had told my dad about the bodies and about what he had seen. And my dad told me about that.
Wow.
So I've known that since 1989. And
Your dad was, now let me get this straight. Your dad was a witness to the same thing that Walter Hout was?
no, he didn't ever say he saw the body. He just saw the material being loaded onto the B-29.
Okay.
But Walter had talked. My dad told him about the bodies, about the other things. There were a lot of people that they kept it all pretty close to the vest. Nobody wanted to get in trouble, and they were all very strict military men. They lived up to their oath of silence. They didn't want to mess it up. I mean, they were stand-up guys, and anybody that will do a little homework. I know I have some friends that think I'm just, they just go, okay, great, and I go, okay, well, do a little research.
They were men of America's greatest generation.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a very different generation.
There's just so many people. I have the same name as my father. I'm a junior, so after this broke, I was getting phone calls from all over the place, and I finally just had to get an answering machine because
Is your father in Houston now?
No, he's assisted living outside Las Vegas.
Oh, New Mexico or?
New Nevada.
Okay, because I tried to find him when I heard that he was in assisted, and I called all around and.
Well, if you'll take me off the air, I'll be glad to give you his number.
All right. Why don't we do this? Tom, you want to provide? Do you have an email address, Tom?
Yes, you can reach me at T Carey, that's TCAREY, followed by the numerals 1947 at AOL.com.
Did you get that call?
Yes, I'm right. Yeah, right.
All right, that's T Carey, TCAREY, 1947 at AOL.com.
Okay.
All right?
Got it. It'll be tomorrow.
So, yeah, okay, fine. Let's keep that private. John, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you for all your work, and you too, Mr. Carey, and keep it up.
My pleasure. Nice talking to you.
Nice to talk to you, please. Thank you, sir.
Wow. All right, to Carol in Fairmont, California, you're on with Tom.
Well, I'll try my best, sir, but I want to say my jaw is on my chest after what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
I am so dramatically shocked to be kind of even a fringe player on this evening. I can hardly believe my fortune. And I want to thank you all. I have in my possession a clip from the 1890s from a newspaper in Michigan where one of my grandfather's employees saw a UFO over a railroad. So I've sort of been a lifelong interest person here. I want to also give you quick information. On my internet, I was able to find out Art McCready. You referenced him earlier, and you didn't know if he was the KSWS or...
Yeah, apparently it was the dispatch, right?
The dispatch, yes indeed. Yes indeed. But I'm very curious, and I'm puzzled about the heavy-handed tactics that apparently, according to a lot of documentaries I've seen, tactics used verbally, threats, something as melodramatic as actually taking a truncheon, is that the right word?
Yes.
And pounding it in the palm and saying, you don't remember any of this, this didn't happen, you didn't see that, and so. What do you know of this?
Well, in our book, we bring out some of the heavy, as you call them, heavy-handed tactics that our Air Force used to silence witnesses. One thing that wasn't previously known was that they turned the homes of the ranchers up in Corona upside down and inside out, looking for pieces of debris that they thought they had taken from the site. They ripped up floorboards. They cut into meal sacks that they used to feed the cattle. They just turned that place upside down. As far as threatening witnesses, they specialized in threatening the witnesses, civilian witnesses that had seen the bodies. And what they would do is they would, if it was, a child and parents, they would take the child into one room and say, we're going to kill your parents, and they would take the parents into another room saying, we're going to kill your child. Just awful stuff. And that shows you how serious this was, that they would threaten civilians with death to keep quiet. Now, what they did was that they employed the sheriff of Roswell, George Wilcox, to deliver the message to civilians. Not all civilians, but most of the civilians. The surviving Wilcox family said that the Roswell incident destroyed him, that he never ran for sheriff again. And we suspect that they forced him to deliver these messages to threaten people with their lives that really...
Have you actually had a witness say that they were so threatened?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
By him?
Yes. The Anaya brothers and Pete Anaya, his wife, recall vividly when Wilcox came around. The Anaya brothers had, they were friends of Lieutenant Governor Joseph Little Joe Montoya at the time, and Montoya had seen the bodies. in the hangar, and it really just shook him up. And he had the Anayas pick him up over at the base, and he told them the whole story. And a few days later, Sheriff Wilcox came calling, and shortly after that, they brought in the Senator Dennis Chavez to speak to the Anaya brothers, never to speak about this, or else, as Pete tells it, he said, the FBI will get you. So they used Senator Chavez, they used Sheriff Wilcox, they had the majority owner of the radio station KGFL escort Brazel around to the media to get when they had him change the story. So with Walt Whitmore, they threatened him with loss of his FCC license. So that's how they got to the civilians, because, as you know, the military has no direct authority over civilians unless it's a time of martial law.
That's right. All right, Greg in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Hi there. You're on with Tom Carey.
Hi, Art and Tom. This is Greg from Cape Cod. How are you doing?
Hi, Greg.
I thought you guys would be interested, and this might be reopened now. If you remember that special they did on either the Discovery Channel or TLC, where they had General Ramey holding those papers in his hands right in front of the weather balloon lie, but that guy, I can't recall his name, with the computer, enhanced that and blew it up, and we could actually read what was on the paper.
That's right, yes.
What was really going on.
Yes, that was David Rudiak did the most work on that. And it's a great story, because who would have thought that the architect of the Roswell cover-up, General Ramey, would provide one of the keys to unlocking the case, because we now have computer programs that can enhance the memo that he was holding.
No, he certainly could not have imagined that then.
Exactly. That's more proof, Art, and I agree with you that this is the Holy Grail, this guy's deathbed letter. There's just one more piece of the puzzle to confirm it.
It's hard to refute, because we know its provenance. It's not something that you can trace back to a UFO investigator with an agenda. It's something held by General Ramey himself. And I know when I first looked at it, I got a copy of it, and I looked at it, and I didn't know what it was going to say. I thought it might have something to do with, the water condenser at Fort Worth was not working. Who knew what it was going to say? But the words "victims of the wreck" just jumped right out at me. And what sort of weather balloon has victims?
I thought that was fascinating. It becomes more fascinating now with this new news.
It certainly does. It seems to me, in fact, it's just me, but it cinched it for me, Greg. What I heard tonight, what I read tonight, just completely cinched it for me. That's all there is to it. It seems to me it's so cinched that somebody in charge, somebody in power, is going to have to respond to what's been on the air tonight.
They have to. There's no doubt about it.
And if they don't, then I don't know what we're to think of our own government. And
Exactly.
it's time. It's time and past time. So, all right, buddy. Thank you very, very much for the call. Take care. Tom, we're up at break, so stand by and we'll be back. If you have a relevant question for Tom Carey, who's written a book called Unmasking the 60-Year Cover-Up on I'm Lincoln Again. Come on ahead. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM. And what a ride, huh? If programs get bigger than this, I don't know how. Tom Carey is my guest. His book is Unmasking the 60-Year Cover-Up. We'll be right back. Well, all right, Tom, is there anything in the program thus far tonight? There's been a lot, probably too much from your point of view, that we have not aired that we should.
Oh, I just make one small correction? The full title of the book is Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the 60-Year Cover-Up.
I'm sorry, it wasn't here. Okay. Witness to Roswell. Well, that'll help people in looking it up. Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the 60-Year Cover-Up. That's quite a correction. Thank you. But aside from that, Tom, anything else that we should be getting on the air tonight that you wanted to get on that we haven't?
The reason we wrote the book, Art, was to put out most of the, not most, but many new witnesses to the case. Everybody knows the original witnesses, but we've been uncovering, prying loose, whatever you want to term it, new witnesses since we teamed up in 1998, and we wanted to give them a voice. We wanted to tell their story in their own words, not our interpretation of what they said. So that was the purpose in writing the book, to get their stories out.
Okay, so people can read the witness testimony and decide for themselves.
Yeah.
All right, all the way over to the United Kingdom on the international line. Michelle, you're on with Tom.
Hello, Art. This is on mirror.
No, it isn't. And it's, I don't know how that got screened. I have no idea how that got screened. Diana Dallas, you're on with Tom.
Oh, hi, Tom and Art. Art, I just got to tell you, I'm a long-time listener for about 10 years, and I really appreciate you and George and Ian. And I wanted to tell you that whenever you received your Lifelong Achievement Award, I downloaded the picture of you three fellows and put you up on my little personal shrine of my greatest, best teachers in the world.
Thank you, Diana.
I thank you.
Okay, do you have a question for Don?
Well, I do. I missed a little bit of the show earlier, and whenever you started talking about the preacher, I wanted to ask you if you've been able to get contact with his son, who is living in Richardson, Texas, and I wanted to ask you if this is the same preacher, because
I'm not sure who you're talking. Tom, do you know who she's talking
I
about?
do not know who she's talking about.
Alrighty. Well, let me just tell you very quickly. I just recently, past couple of years, connected with a high school friend of mine. Who we were very close, and we're still close today. And he told me he had a neighbor who was the son of a preacher who was asked to come out and pray over the bodies at Roswell.
Uh-huh.
And he told me that his father, he's a minister now himself, and he's in his 60s, and his father has since passed away, and really that's all I know, except that they had told the story about how another rancher or farmer was showing the preacher in his, I'm not sure about the son being there, but this is the story that he told my dear friend, was that he had his rancher neighbor had a piece of the material and showed it to him and was willing to give him a piece, except he said he couldn't cut it. But they demonstrated how they could farm it into a cone, put fire underneath it and water in the cone, and of course the water was never affected. It didn't warm up, heat up, or anything.
Wow.
And of course they just couldn't cut it. Y'all said, oh.
Was he a Roswell preacher?
Yes, sir.
You know, this is interesting because...
And I'd love to give you my friend's name and number.
Well, listen, don't do it here. Do you have the email address that we gave out?
Yes, I do. And
Okay.
I'll do that. I'll contact you by email.
This is interesting, Art, because I was looking for a preacher. We got a story of a Roswell preacher, just like she says, that had been called out to, pray over the last rites, whatever was required. But I never could locate him. And I finally gave up when I did locate him. He had passed away, and he's buried in Roswell.
Maybe you've got a new lead now.
This appears to be the same lead. not the same creature, but I would certainly love the contact information to follow up on that.
My guess is it's on the way. James in Lincoln, Nebraska, you're on with Tom Carey.
Hey, I appreciate that. It's been a wonderful story so far. My questions for you are about the broader implications of what was happening in 1947 and things like Operation Paperclip with the Nazi scientists coming over.
Yes.
Admiral Byrd's expedition to the South Pole where they had the UFO bases, or the U-boat bases, secret bases. Was there a secret war going on at this time? And what, was Roswell kind of at the center of that? And based on, this was where the bomber wing that dropped the atomic bomb in the end of World War II. I'm kind of wondering, with this piece of the puzzle coming in, it's starting to make a lot of the other questions a lot more important. Any comments?
Well, I'm not sure about the secret war, but certainly New Mexico was a hub of military activity in 1947. We had the White Sands Proving Grounds west of Roswell, where the captured German V-2 rockets were being tested. We had the development of the atomic bomb in New Mexico with the first detonation in 1945 at Trinity Site. Had Los Alamos there, number of air bases, and the only atomic bomb strike force in the world was stationed at Roswell. So we don't like to speculate, but if I'm flying through the universe and would want to pick a place to visit on Earth in 1947, it might be New Mexico. But and certainly Operation Paperclip, the captured German scientists were housed at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas at the time, headed up by Werner von Braun. And we did get a lead from a woman in Georgia a few years ago. She had a college roommate in 1964 whose father was one of the Paperclip Germans. And she told the story that her father told her that he saw the Roswell aliens, and this is in 1964 or earlier, from the Roswell crash. Unfortunately, we've never been able to find the roommate of our source.
Okay. It's always made sense to me, Tom, that if there are others out there, I am convinced there are, our detonation of a nuclear weapon above ground would, beyond anything else, yeah, it'd be a beacon, all right, saying this civilization has just reached a certain level. I don't know how they regard that level, but it would be like a beacon in the night. And who knows, maybe it's about that visit. David in Sherman Oaks, California, you're on the air with Tom Carey.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Dylan.
Hi.
How are you?
Felt very good. I was listening to your story this morning, and I've followed the Roswell incident for many years, and it seems like the water's really muddy on this case here. I can get so many different conflicting reports about what they look like, what the craft is, how many craft there were. I mean, I've got everything from an ET looking like, ET looking for the one in the movie E.T., Steven Spielberg, looking like that, all the way from Children Like. So it's really hard to figure out what's going on. But I worked on a stealth fighter F-117 project. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yes.
Was it the Nighthawk or?
The F-117, stealth.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it was built in
Stealth aircraft. Are you talking about the bomber or the fighter?
The fighter.
Fighter, 117, okay.
The one that has the irregular shaped edges and stuff.
Triangular shaped.
Well, it had irregular shape in order to deflect radar. as well as the composite materials. Anyway, go ahead, caller.
Yeah, okay, well, I worked on that project, and it was called Have Blue when we first started it. As you know, the word blue is connected to UFO investigation and reverse engineering project. So when we were first told that this thing that we're developing is similar to something that was reverse engineered, okay? Now, this aircraft was made of all composite material. And the outer skin portion, before we put the special paint on it, was made out of a material precisely exactly what you described is a foil. It's a plastic foil. You wad it up in your hand. As soon as you open up your hand, it turns completely flat. And guess what? The military spec, the MLS spec, is this. Won't burn, tear, or fuse. Which means you can't tear it, you can't burn it, or anything. It's incredibly strong and durable, and it's exactly, when I hear this Roswell incident, that's not holding something in their hand, they could bend it up and curl it up, and it's precisely like the material we used on F-117X. And looking at that, it's just bizarre how much of a coincidence that is. And then number two here, I've talked to people, being around the project and stuff, and asked them about UFO stuff, because they're talking about UFO reconnaissance and using a cell finder actually to get close to UFOs to get pictures of them. It's the radar absorbance and reflectors. And they said that we actually have some hybrid beams in some facilities that help with technology, and I found it completely bizarre when I first heard that. But here, do you want the smoking gun on UFOs? I really, I know Art, you're so passionate about the UFO thing that I'll really give it to you right now. Okay? The UFO research, basically most UFOs globally admit have an orange orb to them. They're like a glowing orange light, okay? It looks like a glowing orb, an orb, basically. Okay, when most people see these devices, most of them will land in air wooded areas. Now, the government came to this conclusion and said, okay, the first people who can be on scene at any UFO, when UFO lands, a lot of the time they're having a problem. They just don't land and become visible to people. There's something wrong. The UFO lands, and people see it, there's something wrong with the craft. So the government said, okay, this could be the first on scene. Is it going to be the police officers? No. It's going to be the fire department. Why? Because when a UFO lands and it's flickering orange, it looks like a fire. Okay? People, when they see a flickering orange, something in the bushes, they go, oh my God, there's a fire. They call the fire department. So the fire department is on the scene first. So guess what? Here's your smoking gun. Every single fire department in the United States of America has an instruction manual. Guess what's in that manual on one of the pages? How to deal with crashed UFOs, extraterrestrial craft. It's inside of every fire department in the United States. You get a photocopy of that, go to any fire department, they have it in there. What to deal with an extraterrestrial craft. Now, if they don't exist, what's that doing in every fire department in the United States?
Do you know the designation of that manual?
It's a standard operating procedure manual that every fire department has, and it only has maybe about 300 or 400 pages. And you could look in it, talk to any fireman, go through it, and it'll say right there, it says how to deal with
All right, David, we'll take it from there. We'll certainly verify that or knock it down, but that's very interesting. Have you heard that, Tom?
Yes, I've heard the part about the manual. I used to know the name, but I can't recall it right now.
He makes a good point. It would be regarded probably as a fire, flickering orange, and so they might be responders. Interesting. That would be in the manual.
Yes, and I did see that. I don't recall what the manual's called. I think it has some sort of acronym.
I'm sure it does.
He is right about that.
Okay, Ed in Allentown, Pennsylvania. You're on with Tom Carey.
Good morning, Art. Good morning, Tom. My name's Ed. Fantastic show tonight. Thank you for this show. A brief comment, and a question, please. I don't know if either of you have watched during the 50th anniversary of Roswell on Good Morning America. Joan London was interviewing the general who had the press conference for the Case Closed book. He was a many decorated.
Oh, Richard Weaver, or
I don't know. Yeah, a bunch of decorations on his lapel. A lot of fruit salad, and she was interviewing him, and he was telling her about how the dummies were found on Roswell, and that the locals mistook the dummies for being aliens. And, Joan London even looked at him and said, but excuse me, General, the dummies were part of the alleged Project Mogul, which took place in 1954, and Roswell was in 1947. And with a straight face, this general looked at her and he said, well, those old people, they get 1947 and 1954 confused. He said this on national television, and I taped it at the time. A lot of the media was like belittling the people that were celebrating the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, they were.
I'm going to watch it for it again. My question is, I don't know if you've ever interviewed one of the daughters, one of the firemen that was a guest on at the time in the media, said that they were roughhoused by the MP. That were
Frankie Rowe, yes.
Okay, I didn't know her name, but I thought, is she included in your book? Because her story was pretty compelling.
She's not only included her pictures in there too that I took.
So take her in, and if you can get a copy of that Good Morning America episode, it was pretty shocking. And Joan London got fired shortly afterwards. I don't know if it was related, but it was pretty shocking the way it appeared, because it was kind of stunted. They went to a commercial immediately.
Really?
The notion that you can mix up decades, something that took place in the 1940s with something that took place in the mid-1950s, it just is laughable on its face. Because what people do is they remember things by what grade in school they were, what songs were popular, where they lived, and that's how they do it. At least that's how I do it. And I may mix up a year or part of a year, but
not a decade.
Not a decade. No.
Yeah, I'm with you. Songs are used for that, IDing decades. David in Mesa, Arizona, you're on with Tom Carey.
Pleasure. I have a question for Tom, but I want to first say I'm a long-time listener. Since Richard C. Hoagland told you about what was going on with weather experimentation in Alaska, I'm a 30-year veteran of the United States Air Force and here in America.
Yes, sir.
And I want to ask your guest, Tom, why he thinks this has taken so long for this to come out, that it was a reality, what was first told to the American public in 1947. My father was working for the Philadelphia Naval Yard when the Philadelphia experiment took place.
Yes, sir. Well, it's still not out. I mean, it's not out officially. Why has it taken so long to begin to break in the way it is tonight? I don't have that answer. I mean, this information has been out there for a while now. It's just one of those things where the media, I don't know what they do. They sit on something until some magical switch gets thrown. And Tom, you can be proud to have been part of throwing that switch.
Yes, the herd mentality. They're looking for someone to go first, I guess. As far as the case taking so long is that, investigators, civilian investigators, did not get on the case until 1978.
Well, Tom, listen, we're at the end of the program, my friend. You have done an incredible job. This is going to go down as a completely classic program. And Tom, we'll have you back again. You can be sure of that. Wonderful job. And all I can say is keep it up and good luck with the book, but you won't need it. It'll sell like hotcakes.
Art, it's been my distinct pleasure to be on with you tonight.
Take care, my friend, and good night. And for the rest of you, we'll rest for 24 and see you then. Good night. From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's prolific time zones, each and every one covered by this, the largest program of its kind in the world. What a cool claim. It's Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell, escorting you through the weekend. My honor and privilege to do so. Well, all right, we'll look at the world news tonight. There is one thing. The cam shot tonight is the three of us. The three ABs. Aaron Bell, Asia Bell, Art Bell. All together accomplished by putting a camera on a bookshelf, setting it, and then running into position. That's on my webcam, which is in the upper left-hand side of the front page of coasttocoastam.com. New arrest in Ohio pregnant woman case. Everybody's watching that one. A former classmate of a man suspected of murdering a pregnant woman arrested Sunday on a related obstruction of justice charge, according to the FBI. Miesha Farrell arrested one day after the body of 26-year-old Jesse Davis found in Cahuga, I guess it is, Valley National Park, still carrying her dead, nearly full-term fetus. The Summit County medical examiner on Sunday confirmed the body was in fact Davis's. Sheriff's deputies and FBI agents arrested Farrell after breaking down the door of her apartment and searching the home. Senators are pushing hard on immigration, but we'll see. Senators pushing a new immigration policy appealed Sunday to wavering supporters ahead of renewed debate on securing the borders and dealing with 12 million undocumented immigrants. A fragile compromise, pulled from the Senate in early June, then resurrected after bipartisan negotiations with the White House. The bill awaits a crucial test vote this week, with several senators distancing themselves from the proposal. The outcome is simply too close to call. The U.S. commander of a new offensive north of Baghdad, reclaiming insurgent territory day by day, said Sunday his Iraqi partners may be too weak to hold on to what he gains. The Iraqi military does not even have enough ammunition, according to Brigadier General Mick Benardart. They're not quite up to the job yet. His counterpart south of Baghdad seems to agree, saying U.S. troops are too few to garrison the district's newly rid of insurgents. It can't be coalition U.S. forces. We have what we have. There's got to be more Iraqi security forces, said he. President Hugo Chavez, boy, he's going to be a pain, and he urged soldiers on Sunday to prepare for guerrilla-style war against the U.S. Says Washington is using psychological and economic warfare as part of an unconventional campaign aimed at derailing his government. Dressed in olive green fatigues and a red beret, Chavez spoke inside a Fort Venezuela's military nerve center before hundreds of uniformed soldiers standing alongside armored vehicles and tanks decorated with banners reading, "Fatherland, Socialism, or Death. We will be triumphant." A video recording released Monday shows kidnapped British journalist Alan Johnston wearing an apparent explosives belt of the type that suicide bombers used, and warning it's going to be detonated should somebody try to help him escape. Once relatively indifferent to government affairs, Google Inc., is seeking help inside the Beltway to fight the rise of web censorship worldwide. The online giant is taking a novel approach to the problem by asking U.S. trade officials to treat internet restrictions as international trade barriers, similar to other hurdles to global commerce like tariffs. All right, that's the world news. It's never all that encouraging, is it? It's never all that uplifting. I guess it's just the way of the world. We report negative news. In a moment, we'll look at some of the rest of the news. All right, in a few moments, we're going to do unscreened open lines, and that means you just go straight on the air, no screeners. So here's the deal. When I say you're on the air, that really means you're on the air. There is a delay system. So the moment I answer the phone and I say that, turn your radio off right away, or you will be confused because your own voice will be coming back to you 10 or 12 or 14 seconds later, whatever it is. West of the Rockies, 1-800-618-8255. That's 1-800-618-8255. I don't really have to say the one, do I? East of the Rockies, 800-825-5033. First timers, we've got a special line. If you've never called the show before, area code 818-501-4721. Wildcard line, area code 818-501-4109. And finally, outside the country, no problem, 800-893-0903. I wish my stories were a little cheerier, but they're not. 6 scientists from some of the leading scientific institutions in the U.S. have issued what amounts to an unambiguous warning to the world. Civilization itself is threatened by global warming. They also implicitly criticize the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, for underestimating the scale of sea level rise this century as a result of melting glaciers and polar ice sheets. Instead of sea levels rising by about 40 centimeters, as the IPCC is predicting in one of its computer forecasts, the true rise might be as great as several meters by 2100. That is why they say planet Earth today is in imminent peril. In a densely referenced scientific paper published in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society, some of the world's leading climate researchers describe in detail why they believe humanity can no longer afford to ignore the gravest threat of climate change. Recent greenhouse gas emissions place the Earth very close to dramatic climate change that could run out of control with great dangers for humans and other creatures, say the scientists. Only intense efforts to curb man-made emissions of carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gases can possibly keep the climate within or even near the range of the past 1 million years. In an email to The Independent, Dr. Hansen said, quote, "In my opinion, among our papers, this one probably does the best job of making it clear that Earth is getting very close to climate change that could run out of control. The unnatural forcing of the climate as a result of man-made emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases threatens to generate a, quote, flip in the climate that could spark a cataclysm in the massive ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland. Dramatic flips in the climate have occurred in the past, but none has happened since the development of complex human societies and civilization, which are unlikely to survive the same sort of environmental changes should they occur now." A new federal regulation calls for upgraded driver's licenses to serve as a new universal ID. Some states, though, say no. And the loser in the confrontation between the states and the feds may be you, me. Beginning as early as May of 2008, if you live and work in the U.S., you're going to need a federally approved ID card to travel by air, open a bank account, apply for Social Security benefits, or use many government services. The Real ID Act, signed by the President in 2005, is going to require every state to recertify driver's license and ID card holders with May 11, 2008 compliance date. As part of the war on terrorism, some of the 9/11 attackers had managed to apply for and get state IDs. Sounds reasonable enough on its face, but it has some states in open defiance, others poised to join the fray. Matter of fact, 5 states, Idaho, Washington, Montana, Arkansas, and Maine, have enacted legislation informing the federal government they're not going to do it. They're not going to comply with the Real ID Act. In addition, 13 more states have passed legislation in one chamber of their legislatures to refuse compliance. Nevada, State, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Missouri, Minnesota, Georgia, South Carolina, West Virginia, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And Massachusetts State Senator Richard T. Morris filed a bill seeking to stop implementation of the Real ID Act in that state, with Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley firmly in his corner. Their argument, the measure would create a false sense of security, lead to a lucrative black market for real, well, make that fake real IDs, and increase the risk, mind you, of ID theft. Well, as you know, the bees are vanishing. The die-off, now in 35 states, has crippled beekeepers and has threatened many crops. You'd expected to see mites or amoebas, Dennis Van Engeldorp's microscope, that is, as he looked through it, pests perhaps, of bees. Instead, what he found was internal organs swollen with debris and strangely blackened. It's the first I've read of this. Bees' intestinal tracts were scarred. Their rectums were abnormally full of what appeared to be partially digested pollen. Dark marks on the sting glands were telltale signs of infection. The more you looked, the more you found, he said. His examination of the bees in November was one of the first scientific glimpses of a mysterious honeybee die-off that's launched an intense search for a cure. So far, nothing. So the bees are going, gone. Now the birds, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Last week, the Audubon Society released a new report describing the sharp and startling population decline of some of the most familiar and common birds in America. Several kinds of sparrows, the northern bobwhite, the eastern meadowlark, the common grackle, and many other common birds. The tern, for example. The average decline of the 20 species in the Audubon Society's report is, brace yourselves, 68%. 40 years ago, there were an estimated 31 million bobwhites. Now, 5.5 million. From 31 million to 5.5. Compared to the 100-some condors presently in the wild, 5.5 million bobwhites sounds like a lot of birds. But what matters is the 25.5 million that seem to be missing. And the troubles that brought them down are too likely to bring down the rest of them too. So this is not extinction, but it is how things look before extinction occurs. The word extinct somehow brings to mind the birds that seem like special cases to us. You know, the dodo, the great auk, or the passenger pigeon. Most people would never have had a chance to see dodos and great auks on their remote islands before they were decimated in the 17th and 19th centuries. What's hard to remember about passenger pigeons isn't merely their once enormous numbers, it's the enormous numbers of humans to whom their comings and goings were a common sight, and who supposed erroneously that such unending clouds of birds were indestructible. We recognize the extraordinary distinctness of the passenger pigeon now because we know its fate been killed off largely by humans. But we have moralized it thoroughly without ever really taking it to heart. Question is whether we will see the distinctness of the field sparrow. Its number down from 18 million 40 years ago to a current 5.8 million, only when the last pair is being kept alive in a zoo somewhere. We just love to finally care when the death watch is on, don't we? It makes us feel so very human. To some extent, what are called chemtrails, this is from Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country. Anytime I see anything on chemtrails, I keep it. Are caused by global warming since the stratosphere, where planes fly, is getting colder. Now the greenhouse gases are trapping warmth in the troposphere just below it. This causes jet contrails to freeze, so they remain visible for longer periods of time. Instead of dissipating harmlessly, some of them fall to Earth as large blocks of ice. So look out. Reflective particles are also sometimes sprayed into the sky in an anti-terrorist effort to peer around the curvature of the Earth, but the researchers who study chemtrails are not fully satisfied with either one of these explanations. A massive block of ice fell to Earth again recently, this time in Scotland. In the Courier, Liz Fowler reports what she calls an ice meteor crashed right through the roof of a house at a speed of hundreds of miles an hour. She quotes local police as saying, "There have been instances in the past when things like this happened. An aircraft flying through a cloud will pick up moisture, which can then freeze. As it descends, it can de-ice, and in this instance, a block has dropped off." I've heard of this happening perhaps 15 or 20 times. But then there's this. You may recall, every time I report this, people want hard copy. Last May, a family in Iowa contacted the office of Senator Tom Harkin, Democrat from Iowa, to report the constant crisscrossing of chemtrails in the sky above their neighborhood. They received back from the senator's office a GAO report on military chaff, material safety data sheet for aluminum-coated fiberglass fibers being spread 7 days a week for several hours every day in the skies above their home. The chaff is spread by pilots learning how to mask planes or sending false radar images. It was reported that the military also has lead-based chaff, but is not being used at this time. Chaff was used in the military in World War II, and according to the GAO, has been used in training here at home since the 1950s. Once chaff reaches the ground, it breaks down into particles small enough to inhale. Though military spokespeople insist chaff is not harmful, they say. The GAO report concluded that health effects are unknown and more studies are needed. That's interesting, isn't it? It's not harmful, but they're not sure and they need more studies, so how can they say it mildly? Regardless, some members of this family are sick. On May 23rd, after a hard rain the day before, they noticed this glittering substance and a pinkish-colored powder substance on the roof of their house. Then they noticed the glittering substance on many surfaces, even the dashboard of the family car. Both substances were collected and sent to a lab for analysis. That doesn't happen very often, but they did it. Among the substances found to be in the samples were several that simply should not be there, to say the least. What the report said is, in this we found 6 bacteria, including anthrax and pneumonia, 9 chemicals, including acetylene chloride, 26 heavy metals, including arsenic, gold, lead, mercury, silver, uranium, and zinc, 4 molds and fungi, 7 viruses, 2 cancers, 2 vaccines, and 2 sedatives. God. So, if you're wondering what's in your sky, there is somebody who took the time and trouble to actually send some in and find out exactly what it was. Maybe you're better off not knowing. I don't know. Can you imagine getting a report back like that? Can you imagine? New York has decided that people who flog adult ranked computer games to minors should be sent to jail for life. While you do not get jail for life for selling crack to kids, or beating one up, by a very strange perk of the U.S. justice system, apparently selling a game to a kid could get you locked up until you drop. Lawmakers have decided that selling such games is now a very serious crime. But over the pond, they call a felony, since New York has 3 strikes, three strikes rule and you're out, right? Which was upheld in 2005. It means that if you commit 3 felonies, however important or not they are, you go to jail for the rest of your natural life. Well, all right, there is so much more news that I have here. Stem cells. Stem cells are seen as a future of medicine, but the current administration's opposition to creating them from human embryos has caused scientists to get creative. Now, Ian Wilmot, who cloned Dolly the sheep, remember him, over 10 years ago, says that animal embryos can now perform the same function. Wilmot thinks the solution is to inject human DNA into an animal egg cell. The nucleus from a diseased person's cell would be placed into an animal egg from which the nucleus has been removed. In LiveScience.com, Dave Mosher writes, although the ethical issue is not completely resolved, as human tissue would be growing in an animal egg, Wilmot is confident about the proposed procedure's advantages. He quotes Wilmot as saying, although barriers to producing embryos and embryonic stem cells with this process could be large, so too are the lessons that could be learned. As a matter of fact, we tried to save the stem cells at Asia's birth. There just was not enough cord blood to have it done. We were all prepared to do that, but as it turned out, there wasn't quite enough cord blood. Anybody out there in the business of having a baby? Consider it, because stem cells are getting to be more and more useful for everybody's lives. Anyway, from the high desert and the great American Southwest, unscreened open lines are coming up after the break. How in the world are we going to kill each other anymore? Here in the U.S., they're trying to ban guns. In England, they've already really done that. Violent crime, though, is on the increase in the UK. And so now people are writing that maybe they ought to get rid of kitchen knives. Big, pointy kitchen knives. They say they're used in as many as half of all the stabbings in Great Britain. Many assaults are committed impulsively and prompted by alcohol and other drugs. And a kitchen knife makes an all-too-available weapon in such circumstances. And there is no reason for long, pointy knives to be publicly available at all, having little practical value in the kitchen, argue the authors, who consulted the top 10 chefs from around the UK. None of the chefs felt such knives were essential, since the point of a short blade was every bit as useful as when a sharp end was needed. A short pointed knife may cause a substantial superficial wound if it's used in an assault, but unlikely to penetrate to inner organs, whereas a long, pointy blade pierces the body like cutting into a ripe melon, say the authors. So if they ban long, pointy knives, I suppose people will have to take to rocks. We'll be right back. Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to have to rip my long, pointy knife from my cold, lacerated hand. Let's go to the phones. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi, this is Greg from Iowa.
Hi, Greg.
Nice talking to you.
And to you.
Well, I'm sure enjoyed your shows for all over these years.
Thank you.
I'm a little, well, I'm no better than the next guy, but the thing is that I'm involved with a company who has come up with a gasoline replacement based on vegetable.
Oh, what kind of vegetable?
Well, basically, there's a number of different ones, but I disagree with using food for fuel.
Then why are you involved in a company that's doing that?
I'm sorry?
Why are you then involved in a company that's doing exactly that?
Oh no, we can use plants that are not used for fuel right now.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, like what? I mean, can you tell us, or is it a trade secret?
Well, some are secrets, but the thing is that some can be grown here in the United States, but aren't being grown here yet, but only in certain areas. And that's one of the things that needs to be addressed also.
You see, you're not exactly opening up with me here.
Okay, there's certain plants that are known, but are not grown in the United States yet. But the thing is that they grow them in other parts of the world. I mean, the thing is that here's the difference between, say, the way that biodiesel is made now. That uses heat. We don't use a heat process. We use a chemical process.
Okay.
So it reduces the amount of pollution. And it also reduces by about 30% the cost of processing whatever plant matter or product or oil that we're processing.
Tell me what you're using.
Let's say that we bought some rancid soybean oil.
Rancid soybean oil.
Right, that you couldn't use for human consumption.
Right.
All right, we could process that into fuel that you could burn into a vehicle right now.
No changes in the engine.
Well, we've got actually. Let me back up here. I apologize. I'm a little
nervous.
I'm sorry.
Nervous?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous.
Back up.
Okay. We've got basically three configurations of fuel that work in diesel engines.
Okay.
One is for off-road with no road tax. One is for a diesel engine with no modifications, and one is for diesel engines with modifications.
Okay.
Which means that getting heat so that changes the viscosity of the fuel.
Okay.
It thins it out so that it can work correctly. And we've got some fleets working on this fuel for 2 years now in practice or in in service for 2 years. We'll have the results of these trials probably within the next couple of months. But I've approached some people who are doing the E85 alcohol stuff, and they're interested in bringing this along at a later date as an adjunct to what they're doing now. But the thing is that we've got a number of patents on these things. We've got a lot of...
Okay, what is the purpose of your call to me? What is it you're trying to say? Other than what you've already said, I mean...
Yes, I understand. I'm confused as to where I can go to actually make a pilot plant, get the financing for it, and actually implement it into this country without going to another country, say China.
I don't have that answer for you, of course. I don't know. Anything like this takes a lot of money, and then, of course, you know, there's the other problem. Even if you've got a good fuel, you've got to have an infrastructure set up to, you know, distribute the fuel.
Right, I understand. And then we've got a fourth fuel in the laboratory. It replaces gasoline with no modifications in your regular vehicle, the gasoline engine.
Really?
Yeah, and that's 100% vegetable fuel.
100%, and no mods in the vehicle at all?
Yes, correct.
All right, look, here's what you better do. If you would please send an email to me. I'm easy to get hold of, and I'm very interested in all of this. Of course, I want to know. Maybe there is a way I can help. I'll do what I can. Get me an email on artbell@aol.com or artbell@mindspring.com. That's ARTBELL at AOL.com or artbell@mindspring.com, and I'll see what I can do. I mean, if it's a legitimate replacement and it's easy to do and doesn't take away from our food crops, then I say by all means. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hi, Aaron. How are you doing?
Pretty well.
Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to make a few comments on your interview last night with Dale Brown. I would say that I agree pretty much with everything that he said as far as our strategy with the Middle East. Also, I've seen a couple of programs on cable. Very well. I mean, I did a little bit of background research on them also about the ties to the radical Islamists. They've been around a long time. So I definitely agree with them that we need to make that point very, very clear. I also agree with you 100%. There definitely has been some very good work, and I probably would assume a little bit of luck in that we haven't had any impact here in the U.S. since 9/11, and it's mostly good work. There has to be a lot of what would be considered illegal activity out in the public realm for us to be able to combat radical Islamists, because they have no rules. So of course, we have to do things that would normally go against the Constitution. I can't see any other way to do this if we're going to protect our people and our cities. So I wanted to call and comment on that. Also, I wanted to suggest Mexican football, American style, for Border Patrol. You want to hear the idea?
I'm not sure after that little pre-statement about it, but go ahead.
Okay. Let's use the ones that are already here to help us protect the border. And what we do is we assign a team, to cover like a 2-mile area. Maybe a quarter of the team, let's say there's 50 of them, and then 10
When you say 50 of them, you mean illegal aliens?
of the illegal aliens, right? We'll go ahead and hire them to do 2 things. Watch the border as part of the team, construct the wall.
No, I can't get next to that idea. I'm sorry. Alien is an illegal alien, and I think they're being hired, in essence, by the government to prevent what they just did is somehow just doesn't work in my brain. I'm sorry. It was an illegal act in the first place, and that's that. The law right now says that if you want to come into the U.S., there are prescribed ways to do that. They're lengthy and they're difficult, but it can be done. And, our borders should be protected. Now, as far as Islam is concerned, we are definitely at war with with extreme Islam. The thing that I'm not sure about, and I don't think that I've heard any real figures. I don't understand how much of the Islamic world is radicalized. You know, we say we're at war with the Islamic extremists. Well, how many does that mean? In the U.S., we don't really, I don't think we understand, we don't comprehend how much of Islam hates our guts. Certainly a great deal of people in that religion do not hate our guts, don't hate anybody's guts. But it's unclear to me how much extremism there really is in Islam. And I think we need to understand that so we understand the magnitude of the problem that we have in front of us. And that's what I haven't seen in the press. What percentage of the Islamic world is radicalized or hates us? We know some, but how many? Stories about that, do you? East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi. My name is Tanya Beatty.
Okay, Tanya, we don't allow last names on the air, so I have to jump that, and we're going to have to start all over again. Your name is Tanya, right?
Tanya, yeah.
Yes, okay, and where are you?
I am
Sheridan, Wyoming.
I was Sheridan, Wyoming, where me and my fiance are driving west. We're moving to Seattle.
Yes, I hear him pumping you in the background.
Yes, you probably watch the Faith on the Queue as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, how are you today?
Just fine.
I'm in the middle of driving. I apologize. I was really interested in the show that was aired last night. I don't know if that was a repeat or not. But you said you were going to have another episode with this gentleman. He's a pretty smart man. He was talking about the exponential problems that are going to arise if we just continue to use the fuel that we're using. And I have a suggestion. I wish you would bring it up with him about Perendev model perpetual motion generators based on electromagnetic repulsion.
Okay, I'll bring it up, but as far as I know, there has not been scientifically demonstrated anywhere, ever, perpetual motion.
Yeah, but that's just what they call it. It's just they label it. It's not exactly perpetual, but it's kind of, acts as a good prime mover.
Okay, but if it's not exactly perpetual, then it's not perpetual.
Yeah, what we're talking about is just an alternative to fuel right now. If we look at some of the things they're doing, I believe Switzerland is contracting them for a city car that uses their principles, along with it's a hybrid of that and an electric car, something about putting the signal back into an electric coil and then sending the signal back into the engine itself. I don't know how valid this is, but I find it fascinating. And any kind of feedback on that would be wonderful from you.
All right, I appreciate it. No, I'm fascinated by the whole field, but I've said this for years. Send me a toy. Send me a little toy that runs perpetually, and I'll be a believer. Just a little toy, anything at all, that runs perpetually, that draws its energy from the atmosphere, from the ozone, from anything at all, from 0 point. Any of these claimed eternally moving free energy machines, if they're really out there, bring it on. I'll tell the world. Wildcard line, you're on the air.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
Hi, this is Mike from Evansville, Indiana. I was calling in to talk to you about the story you're running about they're trying to ban knives in England, is it?
Yes.
That's just insane. I've had some martial arts experience. I wonder how many of these lawmakers really understand what they're actually accomplishing when they pass laws like this, because
long pointy knives, sir.
Even a short, like a 3-inch knife, can cause serious damage. They're actually more fatal than guns within their range.
Well, the world is insane. It's behavior. For as long as people want to kill people, they're going to find a mechanism to do it. Banning guns and now knives and probably big rocks and God knows where they're going,
And, well, the fact is, when they ban weapons, criminals tend to be encouraged by that, it seems.
As the saying goes, when they take away our long pointy knives, then only the criminals will have long pointy knives.
Well, you take away the long pointy knives, the criminals are still going to have guns, which are already there. They already have.
Exactly right.
Looking back at the Virginia Tech shooting that happened a while back, I wonder how closely that person followed the news that campus had banned all weapons from their campus less than a year before. I think that he probably factored that into his plans.
Tens, hundreds of thousands were killed with machetes in Africa. Look, people will find a way.
Exactly.
So it's, thank you very much, it's human behavior that has to be modified. Not the means, not the gun, not the knife, not the rock, not the machete, or whatever else people will come up with. But the intent. Wildcard Line, you're on the air.
Art Bell?
It is indeed, yes.
This is Art Bell?
Yes, once again, yes it is, Art Bell.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've got a little, kind of a miracle story I'd like to tell you. When I was a kid, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I used to go over to my uncle and my cousin's house, and I had a cousin my age, and we were the best of friends, but we'd always end up in a fist fight every time I went to his house. Competition over video games and stuff like that. We had one of those kind of, kid relationships.
Yeah.
And so when usually after we'd end up in a fist fight, his house was like 2 houses from the corner of the street that he lived on, and he was out in the country a little bit, and I would take a walk down the street, and there was like a hill, and I would walk down the hill. This happened to me more than once. I would walk down the hill, and when I got down to the bottom of the hill, I would turn around, and I would be in a completely different place. And so I'd walk back up the same hill, and my uncle's house would not be there. I'd be in a completely different, country area. And so what I'd do is I'd get scared, and I'd turn back around, and I'd walk back down the hill, and I'd turn back around, and then I'd come back up the hill, and I'd be back, back in my uncle's neighborhood. And I am not like a crazy insane person. I've never had a delusion. I've never seen a ghost, anything like that. But this has stuck with me since childhood, because this happened to me at least 3 times. So I guess I'm wondering what you think of that. And also I wanted to tell you quick, I did have a recent miracle lately. Recently, I'm an ex-alcoholic, and I've been clean about a month and a half now. And I went to the hospital about a month and a half ago, and my blood pressure when I first got there was actually 210/140, which is really, dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm praying and praying and praying, and I ended up not having a heart attack, and so they released me from the hospital, whatever they put in my system, and I go on about my business, and 5 days later I start feeling sick and chest pains again. I go to the hospital. Now, mind you, I hadn't touched alcohol or anything.
Very quickly, this hour's about up.
Okay, my blood pressure was 180/130, and I made it through again. Bottom line, that's the miracle of what I'm telling you. I believe that the Lord stepped in, even though I didn't feel any kind of a miracle situation. I didn't feel anything come through my body or nothing like that.
Well, that, sir, and leave the bottle on the table. As for your prior experience, one day we're going to do a show. I'm convinced there are these areas that you can walk through, and suddenly you can be somewhere else. Now, I don't exactly know what it is, but I certainly know what he's talking about. I've had a very similar experience from the high desert in the great American Southwest. We'll be right back. Here I am indeed. Coming up next, Richard Massey, who is a senior postdoctoral scholar in astronomy at the California Institute of Technology. He obtained a PhD from Cambridge University in England, and in fact is moving back to the UK at the end of this year. He's been using, I love this line, he's been using the Hubble Space Telescope to look at invisible dark matter That's going to be the first question, Professor. How do you do that? He's also working on designs for future spacecraft that will eventually replace Hubble in the next decade. But that line, I love it. He's been using the Hubble Space Telescope to look at invisible dark matter. Now, I'm sure there's an explanation for that line, and we'll hear it in a moment. Professor Massey, welcome to Coast AM.
Hi, thank you very much.
It's great to have you, and I presume, judging from the phone numbers I see here, we're reaching you in Great Britain, yes?
Yeah, that's right. I'm on vacation at the moment.
I see. All right. Well, I love that line that you're using the Hubble to observe invisible dark matter.
Yeah.
Please, before we proceed, was that meant to be in there? You actually are observing with Hubble? You're seeing dark matter?
Not directly.
Ah.
And there's plenty of things that you can't see directly that we still know are there. And it's like looking at the wind. We know the wind is there just because it moves things around, blows leaves around. No, we can't see the wind directly. We just have to look at things that it affects, and then we know it's there. And something similar is going on with the dark matter. We can't see it directly, it's invisible, but we can look at other things that it affects.
All right, can you tell me what dark matter is?
Sadly, no, not yet. That really is the million-dollar question that we're all trying to find out. And this is the exciting new frontier that we're trying to explore. That what we do know about dark matter is that it's something like 86% of the total mass in the universe. It's everything that we know about, all of the stuff that we can touch and feel and breathe. That's really a very small amount of what's out there. We know that there's this. We're now finding that there's this extra stuff, which we're calling dark matter because it's invisible. And we're really just in the process of finding out what it is. But we know that for every neutron or proton or electron, every sort of particle that's in the standard model, really everything that science knows about until now, for every one of those, there's about 6 times as much of this dark matter. So we know that there's a lot of it, and it's very important for life, for creating the universe around us. Don't yet know quite what it is.
Okay, Professor, well, you said, and you're right, you can't see the wind. You simply know it's there because you observe the effects of the trees and the vegetation moving, and when it's strong enough, houses coming down and all the rest of it. So that's a good point. How do you fit that analogy into dark matter? In other words, what do you observe that makes you know dark matter is there?
So there are a few ways in which we can observe it. The most successful at the moment is by a process known as weak gravitational lensing. Now, this is convoluted, I'll get into that in a second, but the idea is that we can't see the dark matter directly, but we can see ordinary galaxies. There's billions of those all around us in the night sky, very, very far away. Mm-hmm. And these, if we look at these galaxies, which are very far away, they sort of form a wallpaper, a background wallpaper all around the edge of the universe.
Right.
And crucially, the light from those galaxies has had to travel a long way across the universe to get to us.
Right.
It has to travel through interstellar space and past any dark matter. Mm-hmm. Now, it turns out that the dark matter affects the light from these galaxies. It actually bends the light rays coming from these galaxies. And rather like looking through a wobbly sheet of glass or a magnifying glass or something, it actually distorts the shape of these background galaxies. So we look at a background sheet of galaxies, a sort of background wallpaper. They're ordinary galaxies, but they appear distorted to us because the light from them has had to travel through dark matter on its way to get to us.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. Does dark matter have any gravitational aspects to it? In other words, we know that certain things, black holes, for example, can bend light, right?
Right, that's exactly it. So the dark matter doesn't reflect or shine in any way, but it's through its gravity that's how this sort of process works. And I say it's like looking through a wobbly sheet of glass. That sort of distorts the light rays are distorted because light travels at different speeds in glass and air.
Right.
And so the light rays coming from these distant galaxies are also bent, but it produces the same sort of effect, but it's through a completely different physical mechanism. This is all done through gravity, and that's the sort of crucial thing that we're finding out about this dark matter is that it has some gravity. There's lots of it out there, and it doesn't interact in any way. Doesn't shine. You can't touch it. You can't feel it, except through its gravitational influence. And we know that it's there because it exerts a subtle gravitational influence on everything else around it and on the light coming from behind it. That's how it bends the light. If you like, it's sort of we've sort of done some budgeting in the universe that normally things fall together, or you know, an apple falls to the Earth, or the moon orbits around the Earth, because they're pulled together by gravity, because they have some mass and they're pulled together by gravity.
Right.
And in this case, and things fall together more quickly the more mass there is. So the gravity is stronger wherever there's more mass. Wherever there's less mass, there's less gravity. Wherever there's more mass, there's more gravity. And we've just done the budgeting, calculated sort of the totals at the end of the day, and found out that in fact, in the universe as a whole, there's actually more gravity, it seems, than all the mass we can see. And we can only see all the stuff made of ordinary material. But because there's more gravity, we've said, oh well, okay, there has to be some more mass out there somewhere, and it is invisible, so we called it dark matter. But because it has gravity, and we therefore think it's got mass, we think there's lots of it.
Do you believe, Professor, that it is that it's uniform, or do you believe there may be areas of space that have more dark matter than others?
Yeah, and that's very lucky for us actually. But there are indeed regions of space, vast regions of empty space, which contain completely nothing. No ordinary matter, no dark matter, absolutely nothing.
Really?
And then, yeah, this all really strikes me as, you know, there are places of the universe that, you know, you think it's a long way to drive across America, and, you know, there's empty tracts of land where there's nothing to see for a long way. Driving across the universe is a heck of a long way, and there's these patches of land that would take billions of years to drive across at the speed of light, and there's absolutely nothing in them at all.
Well then, okay, then how should we think of dark matter? Should we think of it as kind of, you know, a fog, which you'd be very familiar with in Great Britain, that sort of comes and goes? In other words, patches of dark matter? If it were visible, do you think we would see patches of dark matter?
Yeah. How did you know, actually? Outside the window?
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Good safe guess, but you're dead right. So in between these voids, there are clumps of dark matter, and it really does make up a sort of a blobby filamentary distribution. In fact, there are sort of very long, thin poles of dark matter rods, where all the dark matter is concentrated in big long lines, and this makes up this sort of crisscrossing, interconnected web of where the dark matter lies.
Oh, now that's the very first time I have ever heard this, Professor. I always had heard from people that dark matter was consistent, was all around us, and was virtually everywhere, but you're saying no.
It is around us, and the thing is that it's around us because we don't happen to live in one of those empty regions of the universe. Wherever, in fact, there's ordinary matter, there is dark matter as well. They interact via their gravity, which just means that they fall together, so we end up in the same place. And wherever there's ordinary matter, like Earth, for example, there is dark matter as well.
Oh, okay. So is it fair to say that, and I think you just said it, that mass, like planets and whatever other mass is out there, attracts dark matter as the Earth attracts the moon and holds it captive in the same way. So dark matter tends to associate itself with larger masses.
That's exactly right, yeah. I'd probably say the other way around, that dark matter attracts normal matter just because there's more of it. But that's completely true. And in fact, it's very important for us because, it's very important that it's that way around and that there's a lot of dark matter, because this actually formed first into this sort of web of looks like scaffolding, if you like, of crisscrossing strings of dark matter. And this was vital for life to form, because the dark matter formed first into this scaffolding, and then later on, when the ordinary matter sort of got its game together, that started falling into the dark matter scaffolding and growing up. So it's getting closer and closer together, so there's lots of ordinary matter in the same place. It started building galaxies and stars and planets inside this dark matter scaffolding.
So the dark matter was first.
Yes, it was actually. It started to collapse. So the universe started out as this sort of smooth soup just after the Big Bang, where everything was almost uniformly mixed together.
You do believe in the Big Bang, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. Was dark matter present prior to the Big Bang? Do you think?
Well, we have no idea what was prior to the Big Bang. So.
Sorry, I had to ask.
Yeah.
So we don't know that. The dark matter could have appeared along with everything else.
It seems to have been there all the time throughout the history of the universe. No more, no less of it now. It's there, it's just got more clumpy. And crucially, it started getting clumpy and forming these structures out of the soup. It started forming them first.
Okay. Are we sure that there is dark matter? Or are there other theories that might explain it? And is there, in other words, are we absolutely certain there's dark matter?
There are still skeptics, I have to say. So all the evidence for it is from its gravitational effect. And that's just because it only interacts, it seems, through gravity. It doesn't want to know anything about the other forces in the universe of physics. It only interacts through gravity, so of course all the evidence we have for it is via gravity. Now, most astronomers are saying that, in that case, if we know how gravity works, then there must be more mass, because we know this link between mass and all mass causes gravity. So we're all saying that there's some extra mass and this is dark matter, but there are some skeptics who go away and say, well, actually maybe we've got the theory of gravity wrong, that there's just all the mass that we can see, but we're interpreting our observations of the gravity wrongly because we don't know how gravity works yet. So there are still skeptics who say there's no dark matter, but maybe we should think about changing our theory of gravity, which is Einstein's general relativity.
Well, gravity is just something that comes along with mass, yes?
Yes, yep. And the problem, the problem with trying to make up a new theory for how this works is that, Einstein was a really clever guy, and his theory of gravity explains so many different phenomena working in many different regimes that to try and make a new theory of gravity which explains all of these and the new ones ends up being phenomenally complicated and actually sort of less complicated than just adding dark matter in. And so Einstein still gets my bet for the moment. And in that case, if he's right, then we need some dark matter.
All right. If we are able to finally discover and pin down dark matter, what good will it do us?
Sadly, the practical aspects or the sort of uses of this are rather limited, just because you can't do anything with it, because it doesn't interact with it. You can't bottle it because it'll just flow out of the bottle and run away. It doesn't interact with the bottle. If you have, so if you lean against a wall of dark matter, then you just fall over because it doesn't push back. It's rather useless for us in any practical sense.
It is an odd world, though, and if you can, it is an odd world, Professor. If you can bottle some dark matter for me, I guarantee you I can sell it.
Someone would buy it, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Sorry again. All right, so you pretty much obviously think that dark matter is real. Why is it important?
So, it forms this scaffolding. Is one thing, that it starts to collapse first and form these structures first, that there just isn't enough ordinary matter to have done that. So we're grateful that there is a lot of dark matter out there that will form this scaffolding that we can later grow up inside. But the other thing it does is it just acts as a sort of glue for the universe. So gravity ties things together. It ties the Earth it ties the Moon to the Earth. It ties galaxies together, because galaxies, if you like, are spinning. And as we all know, if you try to spin something round, then you get this centrifugal force and things slosh out. As you spin something faster and faster, or as you spin yourself around faster and faster, then things get bigger and things try to fly apart. Now, spiral galaxies are like this, that they're just spinning disks, and it turns out that they're spinning really fast, and Vera Rubin was the first person to discover this in the 70s, that galaxies are spinning so fast that, and if they're held together by the mass and the gravity of all the stars in them, then there just aren't enough mass. There isn't enough mass in those stars to hold these galaxies together. They're spinning so fast that they ought to fly apart.
Except for the dark matter.
Yeah, except that there's this extra stuff that sort of acts as this glue, if you like, a gravitational glue. Just because there's a lot of dark matter and it has gravity, it holds these spinning galaxies together. And so it really is the glue which holds together galaxies. And in fact, you can even look on larger scales, clusters of galaxies actually orbit around each other very fast, and you'd expect galaxies to fly off into outer space.
So actually,
the universe as a whole, everything is held together by dark matter.
Okay, so actually it should be possible to make the, certainly we can figure out what the mass of something is and the speed at which it's, as you point out, spinning, and we can say to ourselves, all right, at this rate of spin, there's not enough gravity to be holding all of this together, so it has to be dark matter or something, as you put it, a glue, holding everything together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what it is. Dark matter is the glue of the universe, if you like.
But what I'm saying is we can prove that mathematically, yes?
Oh, yes. There's really very simple equations you can do to work out. I mean, you can observe how fast something's spinning, and then it's very simple equations to work out how much mass you need, assuming our theories of gravity are right, to hold that together.
So, either the theory of gravity is wrong, or there is dark matter, and it's doing the glue job, keeping everything together.
Exactly. Spot on, yeah.
Fascinating. Is it going to be possible, dark matter, for example, are we going to be able to create it in a particle accelerator? I know that we're getting ready to fire one up, right?
Yeah, we are. This is going to be very exciting. Over the next few years, there's going to be some really interesting interplay between astronomy, which has done very well at getting the dark matter until now, and particle physics, who hopefully in the next year or so will have a big new particle accelerator. And one of the things that they're hoping to do is to create some dark matter. Okay, maybe not bottle it, but certainly create them and try to pin down what it might be, some of its properties.
How would you create it, as a matter of interest? What would you, in the accelerator, what would you do to attempt to create it?
So you can create anything you like if you smash things together hard enough. This is the fun of particle physics, is you get to smash things together and throw things around the lab. But so they want to smash fundamental particles, protons, together from the inside of atoms. And they do this. There's a giant ring about 5.5 miles across, and it's 100 meters underground. It's underneath Switzerland. It's sort of somewhere underneath the Geneva airport. But there's this giant circular tube underground. And the idea is that you can accelerate particles, accelerate protons in this. And come next year, there'll be protons whizzing around, and some protons will be going around in one direction, some will be going around in the other direction, and then occasionally, of course, they collide with each other, smash into each other really, really, really hard. And the whole E equals MC squared thing comes out here, that if you smash things together with enough energy or fast enough, then you can create anything out of them. And this new accelerator is going to reach such speeds that they're hoping that at least some of these candidates to dark matter will be created in these collisions.
All right, Professor, hold it right there. We're at a break point. Professor Richard Massey is my guest, and we're talking about some pretty dark stuff. Here I am. A lot of people are wondering, why does dark matter matter? And I'm one of those people. It may go to some of the very elemental, important, why we're all here questions, or perhaps not. Maybe it doesn't really matter. But still, scientists are curious. We've got a curious one on our hands here, Professor Richard Massey, and he'll be right back. All right, Professor Massey, that's a pretty good question. Why does dark matter matter? I mean, if you're talking to the average, the average person out there, which you are right now, Why is dark matter important?
So it does, I mean, you can go to all the big sort of why are we here type questions, and that tells, I've said how it makes life possible. It makes it possible to form galaxies and make life exist in sort of over the history of the universe. It's changed that and made everything possible. But really, for me, it's not really that. It's just that it's really exciting. We've found out we found this new frontier. We found out that we don't actually have any idea at all what most of the universe is made of. So it's just curiosity as much as anything else. It's the new frontier. It's the new Wild West. It's great that physics hasn't come to a dead stop, and that we've basically explained the world around us. It's exciting. It's not really scary at all either. It's exciting that we can still find out more about the way the world works. And this dark matter is most of the universe. So it's really exciting to me that we can go and explore this new frontier.
Okay, can you explain to me